I am going to walk you through how to make one of the best meals that you will ever eat. They're called taco stuffed shells, and they are amazing. It's a great mixture of Mexican spices and Italian cuisine all in one. The recipe that I go through with you is for a serving size of about 8. So keep that in mind and adjust where you need to. I also pulled a recipe from Pillsbury.com. I adjusted a little bit because there's some things that I like to add to the recipe and other things that are included in the recipe that I don't care for. So we'll go through that as well. To start, you'll want to gather up your ingredients. You'll need a box of jumbo pasta shells. They usually come about 24 to a box. I always make a few extra just because the pasta can sometimes stick together or break apart, and then you just need to have room for error. You'll then need 1 pound of ground beef, a package of taco seasoning mix. You can use whichever brand you would like. I tend to use the old El Paso mixture. You'll need a package of Mexican cheese blend, 1 diced tomato, 1 diced onion, and this is where I add in my own, I add in a diced red pepper and a diced green pepper in place of the 1/4 cup of cilantro, because I'm not a fan of cilantro. I also use about a 1/4 cup of milk in the recipe, and I'll show you where. And then I use a can of chunky salsa. You can use whichever brand you like. I use Tostitos. I use the mild because it gives it a little zing. So the first thing that you want to do after you gather up your ingredients is obviously preheat your oven. Set it at 350. And while that's preheating, you want to start by cooking your pasta, because you're actually going to need to stuff the shells and you don't want to do it while they're hot. So you'll cook and drain the pasta shells as directed on the box. I think it's about a half an hour till they're tender. And then you'll drain those, and while they're draining and cooling down, you will use a non-stick skillet to cook your ground beef over high for about 5 minutes. Stir it frequently until it's plainly cooked, and then drain it. I put it back into the skillet and then turn it down to low and add in my diced onions, my diced peppers, the taco seasoning, and then that 1/4 cup of milk. And the reason that I add in the milk is just because it makes it a little bit creamy, and it helps the taco seasoning to really blend through well and not like stick in one particular spot in the mixture itself. So while you have that on low, you'll want to go back to your pasta shells and line them up in a glass baking dish. Usually the size is about 13 by 9. You can use whichever size you like, again adjusted accordingly to how many people you're serving. So with the 13 by 9 dish, you'll fill that with the shells first. You can put cheese on the bottom if you'd like. I don't, just because it can tend to kind of not burn, but it just gets too crispy. It doesn't really stick to the shells. You'll then want to take the mixture from the skillet and fill your shells with the mixture. You need to just be a little mindful when you do it that you don't want to overfill them, just because they'll be a little difficult to eat. Too much mixture in one can also just take away from the flavoring of the food itself. After you have all of the shells lined up in the dish, this is where I go through and I use the salsa and just kind of just go back and forth in a zigzag motion, covering the shells and then pouring it around on the bottom of the dish itself. I don't do it before I put the shells down, just because it can get a little like slimy in the dish and it makes it hard to get the shells lined up. So putting that salsa on top really gives it like extra zing. and then you'll put it in the oven, bake it for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then just pull it out towards the end of the baking time. Take the rest of the cheese that you didn't put in the skillet and sprinkle it on top. Once you do that, you'll just want to stick the pan back in the oven for about 5 minutes, or until the cheese has melted on top of the shells, and then go ahead and pull it out of the oven. At that point, just let it sit and cool for about 15-20 minutes, and they will be ready to serve. What I do personally is top it off with some sour cream because it tastes so good. And then you can also get Tostitos chips or some kind of tortilla chips and eat them with those as well, because it catches all the extra filling and tastes great.